Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to the fifth plenary session of the first annual Dharma Studies Conference at the IIT Bhubaneswar. The speakers for this session are Dr. Ravinder Singh from the University of Delhi, who will be joining us online, and Dr. Kalidas Misra, former professor at Sambalpur University. Dr. Anand Mahanan, professor at English, English Foreign Languages University, will be the guest speakers. Welcome, sir, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's an absolute honor to be here. And one of the most amazing things is that I'll be sharing this session with my guru, Professor Anand Mahanan, and of course, Professor Mishra. With Professor Kalidas Mishra, he's a former professor at Sambalpur University. He has published numerous papers and collaborated on various academic projects, including the English translations of Bhima Bhoi's poems from Odia for the volume Bhima Bhoi Verses from the Void Mystic Poetry of an Oriya Saint. He serves on the advisory board of the Meher Journal of English Studies. He's published widely. His articles, including Writing Under Fire, The Legacy of Hemingway, and Between the Alps and the Himalayas, Mulk Raj Anand in Our Time, have appeared in various edited collections. In today's session, Professor Mishra is going to talk about Mahima Dharma, Bhima Bhoi, and the context of 19th century Odian history. So may I please welcome Professor Mishra to the dais. Please, sir. May I have a round of applause, please? It's my pleasure to invite the guest of honor for today's session, Professor Anand Mahanan. He's a professor at the Department of Materials Development, School of English Language Education at the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. He holds a PhD from University of Hyderabad with earlier degrees from JNU and degrees like Masters and MPhil. His work focuses on English language education, especially materials development, English for specific purposes, and the role of folk and tribal literature in multilingual contexts. He has authored and edited several influential books, including Teaching English Through Folktales and Classroom Tasks in English, a resource book for multilingual teaching. Through his teaching, research, and publications, Professor Anand has significantly contributed to making English language education more culturally grounded and context sensitive in multilingual area. So please, may I welcome you to this. Thank you. So I'll hand it over to Professor Mishra. Sir, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure, good fortune, and privilege to be here in IIT for this particular conference. My topic will be Mahima Dharma, Bhima Bhoi, and the context of 19th century Odissan history. Why I say 19th century? Because Mahima Dharma and Bhima Bhoi, they belong to 19th century. Their emergence, the emergence of Bhima Bhoi, emergence of Mahima Dharma as a radical movement, it was all because of the situations in which Odisha at the time found itself. Actually, 19th century Odisha, first I will be telling you about the context, then I will come to the emergence of Mahima and Dharma and Bhoi. And when you talk about the context, the 19th century Odisha opened with the advent of company rule, but it in no way brought in a rupture with the administrative structure set up by the Mughals and the Marathas. In effect, the permanent settlement was a disaster as most of the jamindars were forced to sell out or relinquish their properties because of overassessment. Even though the intention was to emancipate the peasants from their oppressors and create conditions in which they could become autonomous and responsible individuals. The influence of John Locke was behind this optimism to secure to individuals the fruits of their own labors. The influential British policy of supporting the kings and princes who become subsidiary allies, signing treaties with the government to provide revenue for the maintenance of the body of troops also failed. If it made possible for the British to control indirectly large chunks of territory and allowed them to procure additional troops for their protection, it also encouraged despotism and oppression. Commentators have believed that J.S. Mill's theory only created an illusion of permanence, but only exposed the authoritarian streak which originated in utilitarian thought and owed much to Jeremy Bentham's faith that enlightened despotism was the cure for society's evil. The early decades of 19th century had witnessed the landed militia of Khordha, the Pikes, rising in revolt against the company rule, along with the Pikes of Kujang and the Kond tribals of Gumsar. The Pikes had been disposed from their rent-free farmlands, and the king of Khordha had been deposed, and their territory had been reassessed by the colonial administration. The interference of the company rule also shifted and reordered the distributive network of power and the ideology in the state. The Gajpati king of Khordha, now made the superintendent of the temple administration, suffered because of the complex interplay of dominance and the authority and power between the king and the other kings, the landowners, the chiefs and other title holders, even when he enjoyed the status of a Charanti Vishnu, a god in flesh and blood, by the common population who looked up to him in veneration and worship. The Pikes, in fact, did not comprise a homogeneous group as seen through the prism of colonial historiography, but diverse populations drawn from different caste and social backgrounds, like the Panas, the Chasa, Andhras, the Telangos, and the Kondos, even some Muslims. The reassessment and sale of property because of colonial settlement disposed many of these traditional landholders and invited the entry of a new group, the Bengali Amla, into the landed hierarchy of the region. Earlier, Bakshi Jagabandhu Vidyadhar had described the pathetic condition of the cultivators. From Darutheng to Chhattargarh, the whole of the country was let out to farmers. Where there was resources of 5 rupees, those farmers demanded 15. Salt rose from 1 para to 5. Such was the deplorable state of the riots that they were obliged to 5, at a lower rate. Such was the deplorable state of the riots that they were obliged to substitute on harms and water. Yet, notwithstanding the extremity of wretchedness, no one took any notice of their condition. Dr. Harikrishna Mahta writes in his History of Orissa, throughout the British administration, The revenue settlement of this land was regained by the people as a sort of epidemic like cholera or smallpox because of the harassment it caused and the evils it brought in its wake. The reader can well imagine the condition prevailing in the beginning of 19th century when there was practically no administration and the so-called administrators were some other than the greedy and corrupt merchants of East India Company. It was through these corrupt individuals that the unscrupulous people managed to settle the lands in their own names, depriving the legitimate owners of their possessions. During this period, many people got their land settled in the names of the Mahantas, like those at Puri, relying on the professions of the English that they would not interfere with the religious institutions. And on the honesty of the Mahanta who they believed would not appropriate the property to themselves. But the Mahantas proved themselves treacherous and became big landlords by themselves. And the British paid no heed to the interests of the people. I'll have some. Sir, I'm sorry.
Easy. I like it.
I'll put it here. Yeah. So I'm trying to tell you about the context, how the context in a way determined the emergence of Mahima Dharma and Bhima Bhoi. The king of Khurdha, Mukundadev II, had lost his estate. And the kingdom after his estate and kingdom after his release from prison, even when he was the superintendent of Jagannath temple, he was son of all powers. The people of Khurdha, suffering from long because of poor management, excessive taxation and unchecked oppression by the unscrupulous Amlas on the one hand and the tyrannical agents of the new farmers on the other, rose in rebellion when they could no longer tolerate the abuses and extortions. The colonial administration thought it was acting as a harbinger of modernity and enlightenment by abolishing sati, curbing the thugs, and banning human sacrifice. It believed that it was trying to bring in a certain amount of order and discipline in systematizing the affairs of administration. But it was also perpetuating oppressive measure in dispensing justice and curbing exploitation and corruption. And what more, it was also interfering in the day-to-day administrative affairs of kings and questioning their corrupt and immoral practices. The belief in the Lord and the colonial administration was again shaken by the Great Famine of 1866, a catastrophe which wiped out nearly one-third of the population of the province, but did not eliminate the norms of caste. Pyari Mohan Acharya, in his History of Odisha, had mentioned that during the famine of 1866, nearly 8 lakh people died. Some people were so torn with hunger that they fiendishly devoured the flesh of their own children, and such social evils as murder, suicide and madness were extremely prevalent. This is Pyari Mohan Acharya. Fakir Mohan Senapati wrote in his autobiography written in Odia and translated as My Times and I by J.B. Bolton, from mid-February on, people began to die. Day by day, the death rate mounted. Wheresoever you went, on the river ghats, by the tanks, in the fields and woods, you found corpses, till gradually the whole country seemed to fill with them. Almost all of them died. Early in the morning, the sweepers picked up the bodies, piled them on carts, and tipped them into the river. For a month to 6 weeks, I saw the sweepers taking 3 to 4 cartloads to the river every day. Bhima Bhoi's line from Stuti Chintamani, even when he was not specifically speaking about the famine of 1866, are very much a throwback to the misery and suffering of the time. This is what Bhima will be writing. Foreign armies will invade. They will raze the dense forests. They will cut down the trees and grasses. Not a single leaf or branch will remain. People will fall, writhing to the earth. Corpses everywhere will give their stench. Know this, not a single blade of grass will remain, eaten by the horses and the elephants. These lines also indirectly comment on the resentment and the protest caused due to the decline in the fortunes of the extensive nomadic and pastoral economy, the expansion of British timber trade, and the effect of deforestation and the depletion of forest resources on the cultural ecology of people in Odisha. Inquiring of the famine commissioner bear testimony to the future that has been caused by the serving of cooked rice from the relief camps, as the commissioner felt it necessary to find out whether the food was actually cooked by Brahmin cooks. But even such a calamitous time, the conservative orthodox sections of the upper caste Brahminical order was thinking in terms of ostracizing the people who were seeking food from the relief camps. Fakirmon Senapati in his Atmajivan Charita, My Lives and I, writes, the following year there were adults and children of both sexes wandering the streets with nowhere to go. They had been outcasted by Hindu society for having eaten in the relief centers. The responsibility for this abandonment rests with our careless society. Jagannath Prasad Das in his book in Odia, Desokala Patra, reconstruct this incident in graphic impact on the socio-cultural life of the people of Odisha. The cruelty and violence of the King of Puri forced the colonial administration to record the suffering and pain of a victim and to initiate an inquiry into the complicity of the king, and this in turn influenced the colonial administration to determine the modernist exercise of law and civil society against the native ruler. The scandal of torture, as evident in the testimony of different witnesses to the scene, and the perpetration of the crime questioned the absence of any religious and spiritual sanction invested in the king as a Chalanti Vishnu, a god incarnate. By following the secular democratic ideal of enlightenment and progress, the colonial administration treated the king of Puri like a commoner and convicted him with the charge of eliminating one of the subjects and sentencing him for life, and in the process alienating the people of Odisha. I'm sorry, I had a bad cold. No, it's okay. So it in its turn highlighted the degeneration and impurity that had infected the body politic of the temple administration, suggested the disappearance of the Lord from the temple, leaving only the idol images. In fact, the Jagannath temple at Puri in the 1870s worked as a sort of prism through which one comes to see the processes of change by the coming of the English rule and the missionary society. And that led, in a way, in 1881 to this attack on the temple at Puri by some of the followers of Mahima Dharma. The group of rebels who accompanied Dasaram was one of the followers, in the year 1881, in their long march from Chandrapur in Sambalpur district of Odisha to Puri to desecrate the temple, formed the locus of the minority voices. And they had been described in pejorative terms as the uncivilized, uncouth, unclean, wild people in the news reports of Utkal Deepika. The then magistrate of Puri, Babu Kamalnath Bose, sentenced the companions of Dasaram, who was the lone casualty in the attack, like Dhani, Situ, Bhagat, Mayaram, Malik, Fanur, Bira, Hari, Mamad, Badhar, Tharu, Brunda, Sirakar, Parvati and Revati to 2 months of rigorous imprisonment for unauthorized forceful entry into the temple premises. It was the firm belief of the followers of Alek, the people who attacked the temple, that God had left the temple and they had only come to burn the daru, the wooden idols, in response to a command from the Lord. Another incident, it is pertinent here to remember that Dibya Singh Dev, the king of Puri and the superintendent of the temple, who was charged with murder and convicted and sentenced to transportation for life in the year 1877, even Raja Mukunda Dev, who succeeded Dibya Singh Dev, took no interest in the affairs of the temple and incurred the displeasure of the people and the colonial administration. During the time when Rani Surjamani Patamahadevi was in charge of the temple, when Dibya Singh Dev was a minor, the temple administration and the maintenance of funds were in a bad state. If the deportation of the king created a furor all over Odisha, it also showed to what extent the Lord and the representative of the Lord had gone down in the estimation of the people. Another incident, the attack on the temple, then the deportation of the king of Puri because of the charges of murder, and subsidiary, there were other things also which were happening in 19th century. The situation in the tributary states which were internally autonomous under the Mughals, the Marathas and the British, that was deteriorating day by day. It was in May 1881 that the Bhuiyas of Keonjhar were up in arms against their oppressions, and the exertions of the king and this rebellion made a hero out of Dharanidhar, the Bhuiya rebel chief. And as Mrityunjay Rath in the 5th chapter of the 22nd volume of Utkal Sahitya mentioned, that the cause of rebellion was the excessive tyranny of the king of Dhanurjaya Narayan Bhanjadev. As was evident from history, the past 117 years of British rule in India had witnessed no less than 110 insurgencies to resist the colonial incursion and the structures of power and dominance by the indigenous forces. Like here the Paiks, the Kandhas, and the tribals and other insurgents described by Starling as grossly stupid, barbarous, debased, tyrannical, and slaves of the most groveling superstitions. British administration was very much against such incursions. The resistance of the tribals and the poor people were directed against more privileged groups of Indians as often as the British, as they found themselves impoverished by land fragmentation, expropriation of and lack of investment, or improvement in their economic status. And the pattern of imperial subordination and subservience to the rich peasantry created the stirrings in the formations of regional cultures and the devotional religious movement with their distinct pattern of non-Brahminical worship and the reformatory design to draw the marginalized and the privileged of the society. That is why when in 1804 the Board of Commissioners removed Mukundadev, the king of Khordha, on charges of sedition and attempted rebellion, and resumed his authority and assumed the administration of the temple, they recognized the bond between the king and the temple and the people of Odisha. These are some of the, uh, turbulent situations which gave rise to emergence of Mahima Dharma, emergence of Bhima Bhoi. Actually, the second half of 19th century, if you remember, the turbulent decades of the second half of 19th century were very much ripe and propitious for the emergence of Mahima Dharma and its ardent follower Bhima Bhoi. Perhaps the fear of the apocalypse and the strange fascination with it awakened our interest on a poet who too harped on the inseparable mysteries of origin and destiny, of a nameless God who can rise above the deafening drumbeats of the revolt, scaffolding so many gods before the people. Bhima Bhoi shows how individual lives and histories vitally interact and reenact and partake in the paradigmatic story of man's journey through life. Even the specifically political social dimension of history, which plays such a prominent role in his vision, appears to be part of the redemption. Bhima Bhoi is the site of so many legend and controversy. The exact year of his birth is subject to dispute, though there is the same sort of consensus, consensus that he was born sometime between 1845 to 1850, and he died in 1895. 4 villages, Joronda of Dhenkanal district, Gramardeha in Redhakol subdivision of Sambalpur district, Jata Singha and Paiksara of Balangir district, contest and are identified as the birthplace. 2 couples, Janarjan and Mahargi, Danara and Gurbari, have been identified as his parents. His belonging to a low Kon family is also not free from dispute. Even when Bhima Bhoi himself calls himself a Kons, as is evident from his works, the Kons have been described as one of the principal wild tribes of India, and Kons districts formed a part of the Madras presidency, though they spilled over into the dependencies of both Bengal and the central provinces. Commonly known as Kondestan, a large chunk of which was subject to the Zamindars of Gumsar and Chinakhamiri on the one side and Bodh and Daspala on the other, they inhabited the mountain ranges only. In the 19th century, they drew the attention In the 19th century, they drew the attention of the company rule due to the Gumsar rebellion of 1836-7, when the king of Gumsar escaped and sought the protection from the British troops pursued for his capture. The British administration gradually knew more about the habit of human sacrifices and of systematically destroying their female children and eventually succeeded in abolishing these inhuman practices. So all accounts suggest that Bhima Bhoi was very much cradled in penury and nurtured in privation. He lost his father very early in his life, and when his mother remarried, his plight intensified. So much so that he had to fend for himself by grazing cattle in the forest. His Stuti Chintamani refers to the plight of his death when he roamed in the, when he roamed, the Stuti Chintamani refers to the plight of his, living when he roamed in the forest tending cattle and allayed the pangs of his hunger by drinking water from the stream. It is said that the Chaitanya Pradhan, one Chaitanya Pradhan of the village Kankanpada of Redakol subdivision, was Bhima Bhoi's employee. He was a devout reader of Bhagavad, a popular religious text in Odisha composed by Jagannath Das, a 15th century Odia poet. Unable to enter and be a part of the religious ceremonies, discussions and readings from the Bhagavata because of his low status, he stood outside Chaitanya Pradhan's house and listened to the reading and took to memory the entire religious text. Legend said it that once Bhima Bhoi went out into the forest with the cattle and didn't return. This is, these are the stories centered around him. Didn't return. Later on, people found out that he had fallen into a well, and when he was offered help, he said that he would stay there in the well till his Lord came to rescue him. And it was then that his Lord Mahima Gosai came from Jorunda to his rescue by stretching his hand and lifting him out of the well. After the incident, his employer Chaitanya Pradhan freed him from his regular duty of rearing and cattle grazing to follow his spiritual calling. He was only 16 years when Mahima Gosai came and initiated him and blessed him with the gift of poetry. The village Kandhara near Radhakhol is regarded as the village where Bhima Bhoi had fallen into the well. Mention about Mahima Gosai and the new faith were first made in the Odia newspaper Utkala Deepika in 1st June 1867. There were references to a Falahari Baba, a saint surviving on fruits and living on Kapila's hill in Dhenkanal, district of Odisha. This ascetic worship first lived on fruits and then on milk and then only on water. One day, after receiving the direction of the Lord, Alek, the indescribable Lord of the void, he cropped up his matted locks of hair and put on the bark of a kumbhi tree and started preaching a religion that rejected caste discrimination, idol worship, and rituals, and embraced one God, the God of the void, Alek, and Nirakar, the God without a form and shape. The colonial administrators, early in 1880s, took upon themselves the task of tracing the antecedents of this new faith and constructed an account of the founder of this faith. In their account, there was this sorry. In their account, there was this reference to 3 different names of Mahima Swami, belonging to 3 different phases of his life. Mahima Swami, identified as one Mukunda Das, was an Acharya Vaishnava who believed in and worshipped Hindu deities. He followed the practice of a Saiva ascetic and smeared his body with ashes, which earned him the name Dhulia Babaji. In the second phase of his life, spent on Kapila's hill, holy place in Dhenkanal, he lived on fruits for long 12 years and became a Falahari Baba, one who will be living on fruits. And then the next 12 years on milk and water and was known as Hiranerapai. During this phase, Mukunda Das, a devout worshipper of Lord Shiva, earned and drew the attention and respect of Raja of Dhenkanal. And innumerable devotees coming to the Shiva temple at Kapilas Hill also believed in his power to heal the sick pilgrims. Mukunda Das, during his sojourn at Kapilas, transformed himself from a worshipper of Shiva, wearing a kaupani, waistcloth, and kanthi, wooden beads worn around his neck, to an ascetic wearing only kumbhipat, the bark of a kumbhi tree, thus snapping his new dharma, the Mahima Dharma, and becoming Mahima Gosai or Swami. As the founder of a new faith, he went first to Puri and then to Darutheng at Khordha, where he established a Tungi, a place of worship, as mentioned in the government documents. He preached that the creator of the universe was Alek or Mahima, a being without form, omnipresent, and he claimed to have direct communication with the divine. There at Darutheng, the village near Khordha, Mahima Swami initiated his first two disciples, Govinda Das and Narsingha Das, who in turn initiated many others, and this was also the site where he was deified. Mahima Swami travelled extensively in the tributary states, preaching his new faith, often with his disciple Bhima Bhoi. It is said that Bhima Bhoi didn't go to any school and no formal education was there, but his extensive travel throughout Odisha, and even sometimes he'll be traveling through West Bengal and other states, that would be giving him some knowledge about the scriptures, about the religious texts. It was not that they would be traveling in full silence without talking to each other. So the thesis that Bhima Bhoi was illiterate and he had no knowledge, all these things sometimes doesn't hold good. And Mahima Swami traveled extensively and preaching his new faith. Often with his disciple Bhima Bhoi, he slept on bare ground, ate only one meal a day, which consisted of cooked food, which he got as alms, and acquired no personal property. He burned the things where he had stayed temporarily before moving to the new place. This way he constructed and destroyed, later on destroyed so many tungis, so many houses where he had stayed. And later on at places like Damana at Patia near Bhubaneswar, Khuntuni at Atgad, where he gave a great feast and attracted the general faith and worship of the common people, as reported by Banki Tahsildar to the commission of the Odisha division. At Malbiharpur near Banki, he lit a dhuni and sacred fire and initiated many to the order of Mahima. A large number of married men and women became the disciples, and they continued to lead the life of householders. In 1869, the dhuni at Malbiharpur at Banki was destroyed as Mahima Swami moves to several other places in the Gorjas before coming to Joronda in Dhenkanal, where he died in 1876. So these are some of the accounts. And after the death of Mahima Swami, Joronda became the site of so many contestations, so many debates, so many conflicts. And Bhima Bhoi, in a way, parted ways from the devotees there at Joronda on two counts. Bhima Bhoi believed, actually Joranda became very rigid so far as the initiation of the devotees are concerned, people. And they will not be initiating anyone who is married. Bhima Bhoi suggested that we can initiate also married people. Bhima Bhoi, Joranda believed that women disciples cannot be accepted. Bhima Bhoi said, we can initiate women disciples also. Because there was some sort of a conflict, so Bhima Bhoi left Joranda and came to Khaliapalli near Sonpur, and there he establishes ashram. So after that, this rupture was there, though every year disciples from Joranda will be coming in the month of Magha to Khaliapalli as a mark of tribute to Bhima Bhoi. But then these are two distinct, orders, establishments. And Bhima Bhoi, through his say works like Suti Chintamani and bhajans, went on, preaching about, say, the God without form, went on saying about, there was this whole question of caste discrimination. He rejected that, initiated women into the fold, and authority of the simple people, that was taken into account. And what more, he was talking in terms of the simple language of the people. Instead of the Sanskritized, the authority of Sanskrit was not taken in, rather the common people. Perhaps I see a parallel when in the English literature, when William Wordsworth came to the scene in 19th century, late 1898, he published his lyrical ballads, and along with Coleridge, and in 1800 he wrote the preface. There he was talking, actually when he started writing, the burden of the tradition of the Augustan writers like Pope, Dryden, Dr. Samuel Johnson, who were very rigid so far as the composition of poetry was concerned, that he rejected. Rejected the poetic diction, rigid poetic diction of 18th century writers. And as all of you perhaps will be knowing, 18th century writers like Pope, Dryden, Dr. Johnson, they had a strict, rigid adherence to certain norms. How poetry is to be written, heroic couplet, that is the best. Certain words cannot be written because they are too familiar. Certain words can only be written because they are, say, hackneyed and foreign. Like, for example, they oppose, and very much vehemently oppose, that you cannot use a word like fish in a poem because fish is very much smelly. It smells. You cannot use knife. Dr. Johnson even was taking, saying things against Shakespeare because Shakespeare used a word like knife. Knife is an instrument that is used by butchers. So very rigid about the diction. And Wordsworth, say, poetry should be used in a language really used by man. He should be, and sometimes, to be a poet, you must be a scholar. You must be a pandit. To be a scholar, you must be knowing Sanskrit. To be a scholar, you must know Greek and Latin. All these things, actually, Bhima Bhoi was fighting against such rigidity. And Wordsworth did that because Wordsworth was saying so many things. To say the profound things of life, you must be a scholar. or you must be a serious person, you must be knowing Greek and Latin. And Wordsworth deliberately wrote about the leech gatherers, solitary reapers, old Cumberland beggars. Imagine the people coming from the margins of society and people who are using ordinary language, simple language of the village folk. Bhima Bhoi, when he came, he rejected the authority of the then masters, the then pandits, and used a language that was very much accessible to the common people. Spoke of a God that doesn't discriminate among the castes, and wrote about people who are from the margins of society, and in the process, he came to prominence. I'll just say something. Why is it, Bhima Bhoi we read quite a lot, and even when he was writing, for example, it is because he had suffered. If you remember those famous lines, sometimes, when we are talking about wishing someone, we say, Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani paschyantu, ma kaschit dukkhavad bhavet. We say this. When we say sarve, we include ourselves. But here is a poet who said that endless are the miseries of the world. I can tolerate to see that. Let my life be consigned to hell, but let the world be saved. He is not taking himself into account. He is saying that let the world be saved, let me suffer in hell. You consign me to hell, but let the world be saved. So here, so selflessly, he is trying to wish about the common humanity. Let the humanity be saved. And that is the arresting appeal of Bhima Bhoi, the poet, who wanted to serve humanity through his poems and establish an order that was very much appealing to all. But sometimes one question comes to my mind: why is it that after Bhima Bhoi died in 1895, in the 19th century, 20th century, we had what last, but Mahima Dharma, somehow or other, why is it that though it had its impact in 19th century, why is it that Mahima Dharma had not been able to establish its sway in a big way in our time? If you go through the case histories, we always hear about in Joronda and in Kaliapalli, elsewhere also, and there were disputes, conflicts, court cases. Isita Banerjee Dubey had catalogued that, in one of our articles published in Subaltern Studies, and so many things. And another thing was that even when it was lauded, the attack on the temple in Jagannath in 1881, even though that was, I think that was a very extreme step taken by these people, followers, and perhaps that in a way distanced the people, the followers of Mahima Dharma, and the common people, ordinary people, in a way were not able to accept it wholeheartedly. And another thing was the rigidities, the strict adherence to rules. Like, for example, you cannot stay in one place for more than 2 nights, or, for example, trying to collect food by begging, and sometimes, like rigidities. And sometimes I was going through one documentary, that was published recently, even among, the followers, even among the followers of Mahima Dharma, there are still these vestiges of discrimination, caste discrimination. Even when we say that it doesn't, discriminate so far as this hierarchy, caste hierarchy is concerned, still there are differences, petty differences, and people are still segregated even inside the community itself. But then all these things are very much subject to, say, debate. But Bhima Bhoi as a poet thrived. But Mahima Dharma as a religion, somehow or other, has not gained ground in a big way. Bhima Bhoi, yes, he is still very relevant as a poet, and he is very much the, you can call it a movement or whatever, but then the poems are still being read. So I stop here, and I'll be very glad to have your comments, suggestions, questions. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Yeah.
Uh, Actually, when you said that he left Joronda and went to that particular place,
Khaliapali.
Khaliapalli,
Mhm.
uh, who was there in Joronda at that time? Who was leading Joronda movement? I mean, because of a differentiation, he left. So, nowhere in the history or literature, it is not noted.
Mhm.
Even in your speech, also, you are silent about that aspect. Mahima Gosai,
Mhm.
after he got that blessings or whatever is
Mhm.
written, uh, but if you look at archives like J.P. Das collected and he revealed through his book, that aspect is not clear, like his birth, date
Mhm.
of birth and all.
Mahima
So,
Gosai's birth, even
yeah,
one point of view is Professor Pavitra Naik, for example,
yeah,
and some say that actually he came from
okay,
both region,
right,
from the Garjat.
yeah,
But the thing is, things are not so not recorded in details
yeah,
about even Bhima Bhoi's travels.
yeah, yeah,
It was said that he traveled extensively.
right,
But then there was one mention of a word in Stuti Chintamani like Firingi, for example.
okay,
Mentioning the English people. The Firingis will come, and he had perhaps he had this, traveled and seen through these people.
okay,
He would have heard stories about the way the English government was trying to establish its sway. Definitely. Like at one point of time, for example, in Puri, when Surjamani Patmahadevi was
yeah,
there, and the young prince, at one point the English government wanted to make a gentleman out of this young prince, took the responsibility of educating the young prince, prepared a routine, 20 day-to-day routine, right from 5 a.m. till 10 a.m.
okay,
All these things. That was only for a short period.
yeah, 7,
But your question regarding, Joronda, what the Bhima Bhoi was there, but there are other,
yeah, that
yeah,
history is silent.
yeah.
Because you see,
Yeah.
when a big person, influential poet at that time in that particular region, he influenced the psyche of an entire region
Yeah, yeah.
in terms of his teaching and in terms
Very
of his
much,
poems and whatever. So that one is not there. Who gave a, you know, uh, somebody might be there.
Somebody will be there, definitely.
But that's what
Uh-huh.
I could not find. So
Maybe that needs Siddharth. Can you elaborate on this? Because he's one who has also worked on this particular period. You know, when after Mahima Gosai passing away, who was in church? Was it Nrsinga Baba,
at Jorunda.
Govinda Baba, and Nrsinga Baba? Because they are the two disciples whom Mahima Gosai initiated. First two.
Okay.
So perhaps they will be there, and
Go on, sir.
and then you know the difference which Bhima Bhoi had at Joronda. My readings was that it was on two counts. One was regarding the initiation of married people. Bhima Bhoi said they can be initiated, but Joronda Babas they rejected against that, went against that. Another was the initiation of women into the fold, and Bhima Bhoi was supportive of that, and Joronda. But now I hear that now even nowadays they are initiating also women, but I'm subject to correction. You know.
So
Yeah,
my
please.
my impression is that both the reasons were very much present, but the power dynamics between the Joronda and Bhima Bhoi had also something to do with the agrarian system, in the sense that Bhima himself established his own setup in Khaliapalli, which was based on agrarian economy, in the sense that the marriages that he did also brought in certain amounts of lands to him, and he became, or he aspired to become, a sort of a landed establishment for that entire monastery,
Okay.
or he had a landed establishment. So, including people would go for agriculture, so there would be tillers and all those things would be present. So, I think the tension between both the establishment had also something to do with the agrarian system and Bhima's location within that agrarian system and aspiration.
Yeah, no, that's all right. That's all right. He has to leave Joronda and got settled there. My point is that somebody may be there, like, that
Yeah.
kind of a stature.
I think
Yeah.
it is Govinda Baba and Nrsinga Baba.
Yeah,
the first two
yeah,
disciples.
that should be clear when you are talking about
Yeah,
why, because it's not about that he was having also large number of followers at Joronda.
Yeah.
And at that time, to give a fitting reply or to stand against Bhima Bhoi is a very Herculean
Very
task.
much, very much.
Okay. Another second question.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah, before your second question, when he came to Kaliapalli,
Right.
the first is, the irony is, his first disciples at Kaliapalli are two Brahmins,
Okay.
Harihar Panda and Vasudev Panda. And there were four brothers, Hari Panda, Vasu Panda. They became the disciples, and two other brothers were there. Actually, among these two other brothers who didn't, who were not initiated, the third brother, he gave, his wife actually gave birth to a daughter and died. The daughter actually, because he was the lone father and there was no one to take care, rear the child, so he came along with his daughter to Kaliapalli.
Right.
There he met Bhima Bhoi and his, consort, or whatever you call, Annapurna Devi. And they said that we'll rear this child as our daughter, and don't worry. And she later on became Siya Mata. Her name, the Christian her as Siya.
Okay.
And she, grew up there at Kaliapalli as the daughter. Now after that, all these brothers, they sold all their whatever properties they had, scattered. They sold all these things, and for whatever money they had, at the time the zamindar of say Menda, where close to Kaliapalli, was out to sell some land. So they purchased some land as a set of security for their daughter. Bhima Bhoi's the third brother, and he was assisted by this Haripanda and Basupanda. So they purchased some land from the Jamindar who wanted to dispose. It was to the tune of 55 acres or something like that. So the Bhima Bhoi ashram at Khaliapalli presently, it stands on that particular land.
Okay.
And along with that, some others also contributed. And that is that here. Now, your question.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Second question is that when this group of people, more than 100 or 200, they attacked Jagannath temple.
May not be that much.
Very less, because JP Das has mentioned, very less.
Even children were there.
Yeah. So,
Women, children, and all were unarmed.
yeah. Nameless. Okay. So actually, Bhima Bhoi was alive at that time.
Yeah.
Right? Was there any permission, or Bhima Bhoi instigated these guys,
No.
or
Record says Bhima Bhoi was not there. Actually, these people, coming from Sambalpur district, from Barpali, they walked all the way, followed this Kantilo Khordha road, took the particular road. They said that they had a vision. It's like they had a vision and they were just obeying that. And what was that? No, God has departed from the temple and you go and burn the darus. This was what the command they had from. So they were, having a set of order. Bhima Bhoi, neither Bhima Bhoi was there nor he was the instigator. So that was because they were not following, at the time, if you say 1881, Bhima, after 77, Bhima Bhoi had already come to Khaliapalli. So that's that. That is one of the, but then, yes, you have to.
record, like JP also mentioned, JP Das mentioned, there is no record to substantiate. Actually, how this moment occurred all of a sudden. Okay, what are the reasons? How this group of people, like led by, you mentioned a couple of names, all of a sudden they,
Yeah, actually, it was you can call it a long march.
Long march also.
English government was already prepared to face them.
To face that.
The
Right.
wars had already gone. So in this scuffle, only one person died, the Saddam. Leader, they said, because may not be the leader, may not be the leader. Now he is projected as a leader, but I think a couple of people, and with pots, pots of cooked rice. Actually, we have this belief. Their intention was to desecrate the temple. Intention was to defile the temple, and so they had cracked pot. If you are serving someone on a cracked pot, that is not auspicious. So they were taking rice and some cooked food on a cracked pot to throw it into the temple. So that was a way of desecration. So in the scuffle, English people, they were there and they crashed into the temple, and there was this couple, and one person fell, I think, on a stone or from a height, and he died later on. So Bhima Bhoi's presence or his instigation, I think we can accept with a lot of suspicion.
There is no, clear-cut answer
clear
to
cut,
this
no
kind
clear
of.
cut. Even, there was an attack. Even nowadays, people do say there was no attack. It is a colonial construct, some sort of thing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. So, due to paucity of time, we'll have to rush to the session. Now, may I have the guest of honor, Professor Manan, to share a few words with us.
Thank you very much. It was really a pleasant experience listening to Kalidas da. He, in his talk, he